All right. Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. So welcome to today's webinar. My name is Chase Welch, and I'm here with Tom Boyer, the owner of IR.Tools. And today we are going to be telling you all about our ridiculously good thermal targets you can use for all of your thermal optic needs. So just a bit of housekeeping before we get going. Please, if you have any questions, put those in the chat and we'll answer those at the end of the presentation. Little note for you, everything on our store, that is www.ir.tools/shop, is 20% off this week. Just a little treat to you and thank you for stopping by. And there's a link in your webinar and you get an additional 5% off code there if you click that. And if there's also a link below, if you'll notice, for a PDF that has details on our upright targets. So a little background on myself. I'm a Marine Corps infantry veteran. I got out in 2011, started contracting in the training space, primarily tactical training, weapons training, and working on a variety of R&D projects for different government agencies and private military companies. And so I've just been in this space for a while now, learning and growing and having a great time. And so Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, Tom Boyer. I started IR.Tools about 17 years ago after being in the Navy, and took that Navy time, that Navy heart, and brought those skills and with my engineering background, and we started IR.Tools to help to protect those who protect us.
Awesome. All right. And just another reminder, there should be an ask a question button at the bottom of your screen there. So if you do have a question, go ahead, throw it in the chat and we will get to it at the end. So without further ado, let's get going. All right. So as you can see, the title of this presentation is Ridiculously Good Thermal Targets for Thermal Scopes. And that is absolutely our focus today, is our proprietary thermal technology, all about it, how it works, and what you may be able to do with it in your different industries and sectors you work in. All right, so let's get going. Maybe you warned me about this.
Yes.
There we
go.
All right. So we already covered the questions thing. And if you do have any questions, feel free to put those in there, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. And if you have any issues or problems, please let us know as well. Hopefully you can hear us and see us and can see the presentation. All right, so this is us, and we already covered our backgrounds there. So let's keep going. Right. So what is the mission of IR.Tools? Is protecting those who protect others. So what is IFF, or identify friend foe? This is a very important thing for deconflicting the battle space. Blue on blue has been a reality of human conflict since its inception.
We all remember Pat Tillman years ago, who
yes,
played football, then went to serve his country and was killed due to IFF.
Exactly, and that's a tragedy that we aim to help mitigate.
Exactly.
So the fog of war is real. People get confused, and the modern battlefield is certainly no exception to the realities of combat. And so if we can use various technologies to help friendly forces identify each other and not have any blue on blue engagements, because as they say, friendly fire isn't, then we want to do that as best we can. Another good thing that our technology is able to do is aid in law enforcement for either identifying friendly forces, or sometimes more importantly in a covert setting, identifying suspects or persons of interest through passive and otherwise non-visible means.
Right. Not only that, search and rescue. We've had so many people just this year that has started to deploy our technology for search and rescue to be able to identify who's the officer and who's the lost person that they're looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah. And another thing we can do, obviously, of course, is help with all different kinds of training. Thermals are becoming a staple of the modern battlefield. For those of you who may be paying attention to the Ukrainian conflict, that is certainly a great example of how thermals are being used in a wide variety of roles. And that's just a topical and current reference for how thermals are being utilized on the modern battlefield. But like Tom said, there's a variety of applications that we'll cover in the presentation, from the industrial industries, search and rescue, law enforcement, and stateside military training as well.
Right. And surprisingly, in the last few years, so many civilians have been purchasing the same sort of thermal technology for weapon sights. And so we're seeing this technology go so many places, just everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah. It is once you start to understand how thermal works, you sort of start realizing all the things you can use it for.
Right.
So we sort of just covered this, who benefits from the infrared solutions. And one thing I do want to touch on more is definitely the civilian component of that. As Tom said, both night vision and thermal optics, whether that's head mounted or weapon mounted, are coming down in price. And that's causing a much larger adoption in the civilian market, whether that's for, home defense, the responsibly armed citizen, which can be, unique to different countries and their laws for sure, and in the hunting space as well. And that's something that a lot of Europe is involved in addition to the United States and Canada. Hunting is a big thing, and doing it responsibly and politely is a very important thing as well. And so thermals can be a great option for that as well.
And we've seen you talked about the dropping of price. 20 years ago, a few law enforcement would have helicopters.
Yes.
That they could have, thermal eyes in the sky. Mm-hmm. Since the advent of drones, just every week we're getting more and more calls about people that never could afford a helicopter, but they could afford drones. And so they now have thermal eyes in the sky and night vision in the sky. And so it's just so out there so quickly.
Absolutely. I mean, for less than the price of a 20-year-old used car, you can get a brand new off-the-shelf drone with decent payload, decent loader time, and a thermal camera on it.
Yeah.
And you can have it in 2 days from Amazon.
Game changer.
Game changer. Yeah, absolutely. So there really is no limit to who's going to benefit from the reduction in cost of thermal technology, the increasing of the performance of the thermal technology, and then subsequently our products, which are used in, like I said, a wide variety of applications.
Okay.
You want to go through this one?
Sure. So all of our products rely on 4 different types of films, and we're just going to quick overview. IR field, which is completely covert yet visible to night vision. IR garrison, which is overt, so that is visible to night vision and white light reflective. Then our photoluminescent, which is gives off white light energy. And then the last one is our thermal films, which that's what we're going to be focusing. We're going to focus on our thermal films during this presentation.
Mm-hmm. And if you guys want to think about this, the IR field may be your classic military application where you're in an environment where you really only want the people you care about identifying you. The garrison is what we've seen a lot of law enforcement agencies adopt. Often they're not going up against anyone who has thermal or night vision technology. So they're more open to the ability of having a variety of different modes being or mediums being able to identify them. Yeah. This is really applicable in the civilian world as well, especially for hunting. We've seen large ranches in the southern part and western part of the states adopting this sort of stuff when they have large hunting parties out at night doing predator hunting or hog hunting, something like that, where you really need to be sure that across a spread out area, everyone knows where everyone else is.
Yeah.
And then the photoluminescent, if you had those stars you put on your ceiling as a kid, same sort of idea, but way better.
Way better. If we drill down into thermal films, we have actually 4 different thermal films. Mm-hmm. So the high contrast is the oldest technology, and it is extremely identifiable, but doesn't have great durability compared to some of the new technology. We have the extreme thermal, which that is the most durable thermal film available in the world. Mm-hmm. And so it's very good for vehicles, permanent solutions. The clear thermal film, which has come out very recently as well. So that's used for covert marking of vehicles, either a undercover vehicle or maybe marking a suspect vehicle. Mm-hmm. So you can see it with thermal, but not with the naked eye. And finally, the upright thermal film, which we're going to spend most of our time talking about.
Yep.
So the upright thermal film is unique in that it's similar to the high contrast and its identification ability.
Right.
Yet it can be seen from many different angles. And so one of the difficulties with the high contrast legacy technology was that you had to get a position just right.
Yeah.
And so this upright thermal film allows you to see it at all kinds of angles much easier.
Mm-hmm. So real quick, before we go deep into our technology and how it works, we want to cover the energy spectrum and what we're exactly focusing on. So everyone's familiar with visible light. We see it all around us. It's how we're able to see. And sometimes there can be some confusion in the industry over night vision and what it's seeing versus the thermal spectrum. So here on the screen, you can see how we've sort of divided that up. from far infrared, mid infrared, and then near infrared, which is what your classic night vision device or image intensification tubes are going to see. Keep in mind that image intensification tubes or night vision are going to be amplifying that near infrared spectrum in addition to the visible light spectrum. But thermal is really focused on that mid and far spectrum there, where you can see, somewhere from the 12 to 3 micron wavelength, which is, it's important to keep in mind just because terms get thrown around a lot. And so specificity in terms we think is pretty important so that, you know exactly what your product's going to do for you.
Very good. Yeah. So we'll spend most of our time in the far infrared and mid infrared for the rest of this presentation.
Yep. So let's talk quickly about thermal scopes and what they do. Now, this is not going to be a technical breakdown on the whole.
That would take the whole time.
That would be the whole time. Yeah, the whole electron exchange and cooled versus uncooled and all that. Needless to say, a thermal imaging device is basically going to collect that 12 to 3 micron range energy spectrum, and it's going to convert it to a digital image. So what you're looking at when you look through a thermal of any variety is actually a screen, a digital screen. And there's a variety of resolutions out there, performance metrics, and typically you're going to get what you pay for. So more money typically is going to cause better performance. And we see this true from thermals that work all the way from space down to small handheld ones, or even ones that attach to your phone that are used in surveying or home repair, that kind of stuff where you're checking pipes.
So somebody could look at the two of us and see which one of us is hotter.
Absolutely. Exactly.
We probably don't want to go there.
That's a different presentation and a different website. Yeah. But yeah, so the range of performance is very vast with thermals, and like we said, not only is the price coming down, but we're seeing performance to price really come up. So people are getting a lot more value for their money these days, which is great to see. And that's kind of true across the board with technology.
Yeah.
So just keeping in mind, unlike some animals, the human eye does not see in the thermal spectrum at all, so we can't see heat. Like Tom said, we have different ways of determining hotness, but that is exactly what thermals do.
And I think this is an important point here. The second point is that the thermal scope sees the energy in day or dark. So it's not that the thermal camera can only be used at night. It's actually very effective daytime, nighttime, Saturday too.
That's right, yeah. Even Sundays.
Even Sundays, yes.
So what is a thermal target? Well, there's a variety of different ways by which you can achieve thermal reflectivity or thermal imaging for a target. But we have our upright thermal film, which we're going to speak on a lot today. We also have our powered thermal target options. But basically, through magic and Tom's brilliance, we were able to basically form a proprietary technology which is able to provide really unparalleled contrast in the thermal target space. And an important thing to note here is that when you're using thermals, depending on your environmental conditions, and we'll get into this a little bit more later, the different objects really perform very differently. And so one of the big challenges that we had to overcome was figuring out how to make a passive and powered system that would perform in as many different environments and atmospheric conditions as possible.
Oh, environments. That's going to be pretty important.
Absolutely. Yep. So like I said, it is a specialized film that reflects heat energy and creates contrast. So contrast is sort of the key when it comes to thermals. The human eye and the brain are trained instinctually to recognize patterns and shapes. It's how we identify faces at first when we're young, and it's how we identify, especially in the military and law enforcement context, human silhouettes, differentiating those from animals, plants, weapons, other important items we want to be paying attention to. And so if you don't have a good contrast, you're not going to get that good edge definition, which is really going to hamper being able to see tell what it is you're looking at. And so our contrast, like I said, is absolutely unparalleled, and that's going to really provide the maximum training value when you're looking at our targets.
Yeah.
So thermals, because they are digital, it's in, the display can show you a lot of different things, and this is just a small sampling of the different palettes that you can see or select when you're using a thermal optic. And different thermals are going to have different options here. But on the far left of your screen, you'll see the rainbow, and this is sort of your classic predator vision.
Right.
And that's going to show some gradient, so that can be really useful in a variety of industrial applications specifically.
Oh, sorry.
No,
So,
absolutely.
and then typically for military use, which of these do we see the most? What is
Right.
most
It's going to
typical
be
or-
black hot or white hot. And
Okay.
typically what we're going to do in a military context is we would cycle between black hot and white hot of the same area we're looking at and see if those different gradients showed us, different information.
Okay.
So depending
Okay.
on the background and the environment, typically we were looking for people, and so maybe a person would show up in the rocks better black hot, but in trees we'd see better in white hot or something like that. So you're sort of switching back and forth to get as much information as possible in a military context normally. Typically what we're going to see for law enforcement. However, some unique environments, like I said, maybe thick overhead cover for search and rescue or for law enforcement in a non-urban area is going to be important, and the rainbow can really help there, and as well in a green side environment or in an industrial environment where grading is really going to be important, say for inspecting different piping and that kind of stuff, where you might want to see where there's a flow issue or something like that, where the heat is not being evenly transferred. The rainbow can be very useful there. And like I said, there's a lot of different palettes out there, so it's really learning your technology and what's going to be most useful to you.
Okay. So the upright film will allow you to use any different.
Any of them. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so take this one.
Sure. So one of the key things to understand about our technology is that we have two different options. One is the passive and one is powered. So each technology has a benefit. There's really not one that's better than the other, but there's one that's better for your situation, for what you're doing. So on the passive side, good things about that is that no power source is required. So it is nothing but a optical illusion. So it makes the camera think it sees the contrast that you talked about, but there's really no contrast there, but it appears to be. And so that's really great because you can go and set this stuff up outside very quickly, and you can start doing some sort of training operation or whatever. On the other hand, so the benefit of the powered is that it actually does heat up. It actually creates heat that allows you to see the image with greater contrast because you've heated up. But what you're going to need there is you're going to need your batteries. You're going to need some sort of electrical, some sort of power source. And you may need to, if you have batteries, you might need to go out and change those out and charge those up, that sort of thing. But the big benefit that the powered target gives you is that it's going to work inside.
Yes.
So if you want to do any sort of thermal target training or any sort of a thermal imaging aspect, is you're going to need the powered when you're inside. The other benefit that powered is going to give you is that it's going to work 99% of the time. So as great as the upright is, there are some times that the passive upright doesn't give you the much contrast that you want. And that would be extremely frigid or maybe extremely overcast. You might have more difficulty seeing it. The powered will power through that. And so you'll pay a little bit more, but you'll be able to use it all the time. But the other nice thing is the powered targets incorporate the passive technology. So if you're using the powered and you lose your battery, you shoot through the wire, it'll actually continue to work in the passive mode, and you can continue training. So both are good. It just depends on what you're trying to do, what you're achieving on your range or your situation.
Yeah, and a good way if you're trying to decide which is right for you, looking at your environment is probably a good place to start. If you're in an area that has a lot of overcast situations, or you don't tend to have a large temperature gradient between ambient temperature, air temperature, all those sorts of things, the powered may be better for you because there are environmental conditions which will more closely mimic what we're talking about with indoor. And that's just because everything tends to be temperature controlled and regulated. And so that passive technology isn't going to work quite as well for that contrast. So power may be better for you in those situations. If you live in most parts of the world, outdoors does tend to have a wider temperature gradient, and the passive may work great for you. And another thing I want to touch on, and we'll get deeper into this later on, is that if you are doing any sort of long range reconnaissance, observation, or shooting training, the powered is really great because we've shot these out to about 1,280 yards day and night, and they work absolutely fantastic. It's almost alarming how well they work and how effective thermal can be even in extended ranges. So the powered is a great option because you do only have to have a 12 or 24 volt system that can come off of thermal, a small battery, or however else you want to rig up your power. But they're a great training tool when you're stretching out those distances for sure.
Right. Then we also have 120 volt, 240 volt. So those are all options.
Yep.
And also, I should point out too that these are created digitally. So where we have the E-type silhouette here, we can actually create any image.
Yeah.
We could create your image and put it right on a target.
Well, nobody wants that,
but nobody wants to shoot it. Yeah. So we don't want to do that.
Hopefully. Yep. So yeah, why thermal targets in the first place? It's the only truly performance-based and professional option for any kind of training, regardless of application, for a thermal optic. There are, sure, you can light something on fire or use a hand warmer or something, but the performance it pales in comparison to any kind of professional option.
I mean, can I just shoot at a piece of paper? What?
I mean, boy, you could try.
Okay.
But the problem, like one of the problems with standard paper targets is they're going to very quickly assume ambient temperature, whatever that may be. And so you're going to lose that contrast and edge definition, as you can see here on the screen. That's actually an image taken at a pretty long range with a not super great thermal, just to show that even in less than optimal conditions with less than optimal equipment, our target is still clearly the choice if you're going to do any kind of thermal training or practice at all. And so, they're just, if you are serious in your profession and you're using thermals, having a professional thermal option is really kind of required.
And in this case, the diamond that you see on the right, that is the upright thermal film.
As we see here.
There you go. Yeah, good call.
And like I said, if you're a professional, you're going to want to use some kind of target. So we touched on this before, but environment absolutely is a factor. And if you're training outside, it's not uncommon for the weather to change. Sure. And that's one of the things that we addressed in our first gen and really have sort of solved in the upright thermal film is dealing with, say you go out and it's sunny, you got direct sunlight, maybe it's, the sun's high in the sky. As the day goes on, clouds roll in, the sun changes, it rains, there's fog, there's all kinds of things. And having all those different factors to account for, having that professional, truly purpose-built thermal target is going to solve most of those issues. There's not a lot of thermal or environmental factors, I should say, that are going to be a problem anymore for our upright thermal film.
Right. I remember going out using the first generation thermal film. As good as that film was, and it's done a lot of good for us. But it was kind of one of these things where you had to kind of stand on your left foot and wiggle your right ear and just kind of angle yourself just right in order to get the contrast.
Yeah.
Whereas the upright, it's just so much easier. You don't have to do all that wiggling and setting and angling your target a little bit more, a little bit less, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really been awesome to see that progression. And so Tom was actually just touching on this, with the first gen film, it needed to be at a 15-degree angle, which, how you're calculating that on the fly is somewhat of a challenge, to say the least.
Yeah.
And you spent a lot of time in the setup. And so that was, as soon as this rolled out, we knew that we needed to address it. And that's what we did with the upright thermal film. And so that's just, it's no longer an issue anymore.
Right. A lot of our customers told us that they were wasting a lot of time having to go out and try to reshift their targets to be leaning back. And they also, one actually said that they were damaging their equipment because, they had equipment that specifically, brought the targets 90 degrees up. And so by fixing them so they didn't come all the way up, it was actually damaging the equipment. And so it's a significant waste of time and money to have these things lean back all the time.
Yep, absolutely. So there you go. Our upright thermal film solved that, as the name would indicate. So as you can see here, you can get almost to 90 degrees. So really, it's not a performance issue for the film. It's at some point you're just no longer looking at the target. And we've certainly tested this out where, at around 100 yards, we've gone out and we've gone all the way from 89 degrees to back to sort of zero and swung around, and whether that's high angle or not, it really doesn't matter. If you can get your thermal on the target, you're going to see some contrast and you're going to get that edge definition.
So it's not only the fact that I can put the target straight up, it's that I can be in any different position. Whereas again, with the first gen, like you had to be right in front of it, and like you didn't go left, you couldn't Yeah, can't see it.
Absolutely.
So
And,
this was
and
much
that's one of the
easier.
nice things too, when you're talking about, there's some high angle shooting applications for sure. It tends to be somewhat specialized. But for aerial platform work, or for search and rescue training and reconnaissance, you typically are in environments where you're not going to get that perfect flat, right on 90-degree
Right.
shot. And so being able to train on things that are going to be able to simulate those angles is really nice, where you could throw these
Sure.
things out, whether you're aerial platform based and you're laying them on the ground or even setting them up. You're still going to, if you, like I said, if you can see it, you're going to get some contrast.
Right. You know, Chase, this is my favorite part of the whole presentation.
It is?
Yes, because random microthermal reflectors, that's like my, just the go-to phrase. It just excites me so much. I think I wake up at middle of the night sometimes and I just think random microthermal reflectors. How amazing
It
is
is. It is fun. And, what does that mean? Well, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, it means we're geniuses.
Not to put too fine a point on it.
Yeah.
But
Beyond that, the secret of the upright is that we do have thousands, even millions of randomly placed microscopic thermal reflectors all over. Whereas the original first gen high contrast film is just a perfectly flat, smooth, reflective surface. The upright is just got thousands, millions of reflectors going in every which way, so that whereas the other film was reflecting from a single point, the upright, with all these millions of reflectors in every direction, is looking at the entire space. And so it's reflecting from everywhere back to you as the observer. And that's the secret.
Right. And that really is what more closely replicates real life.
Right. And now I'll tell you how to do it. No, actually, I won't.
No,
I'm not going to do that. It was very
no.
hard. It was very hard. Trust me.
So the great thing about our upright is that it's quick. I mean, literally, you throw it up like any other target in any currently existing target system, however you want to use it. You're essentially limited by your imagination. However you want to use these things, they will work.
I like quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody
Quick.
wants to waste time.
No, quick and easy is the way to go. And so here you just can see a couple different images. So we've got a target there on the left in visible spectrum. Now you're seeing it in the thermal spectrum. And there's no question what you're looking at. That is a coyote. And then you've got that aerial view, like I was talking about a few minutes ago, where whether you're using drones or other aerial platform systems, you're going to be able to train on it. You're going to be able to see what it is. And the best part is, especially if you're working with coordination, like in the search and rescue situation where you have an aerial element and you have ground-based elements, they're going to be able to talk and actually train and see the same thing from different perspectives and different angles and talk each other on, where a lot of times it's all sort of notional in training, no longer the case.
Very good. Yeah, with the first gen film, that picture on the far right, that would have completely washed away.
Yep.
And you wouldn't see anything.
So there's a couple of uses. For the upright thermal targets, we got our zeroing targets. We got our passive thermal, our powered thermal. The ESP sleeve, which is one of my favorites for sure, is really fun because it's not just it's one of those things you can use for. It's my favorite training tool. Because outside of the powered, which is absolutely my favorite product, bar none. But the ESP sleeve is fun because you can slide it over just about any backer that's shaped like a silhouette, and get to work. And you've got that good silhouette that has a variety of applications for different use cases, and they're extremely robust. And you can also slide it on and run around with it, which is fun.
That would be fun.
It would be fun.
Maybe we'll do that after the presentation.
You want to go over the zeroing targets?
Sure. So we have two different zeroing targets that we've utilized the upright thermal film for. So the universal zero, it is really focused on 25 meters and allowing you to zero with laser, night vision, thermal, really any scope or combinations of scope. The universal zero really shines with combinations because you can take the multiple different pacers, place them in different positions, and zero everything
right there
fast.
Yep.
On the left, you'll see the thermal zeroing target, which is just made for thermals. It's good up to 100 meters, even more depending on the scopes that you have. The nice thing about that is it utilizes a optional chemical heater in the center of it to create a hot point, though you often don't need it in most circumstances. But that heat is contained right into the middle, so you have the benefit of the chemical heater without the blooming that you typically get if you just stuck it on a wall.
Yeah, I heard guys say that, you know, I put a piece of steel on my engine when I drove to the range and got it hot. And you're like, okay, but it's this big bloomed out thing, and it didn't really do anything for you. And 10 minutes later, it didn't work. You know, not the case anymore. And these are very cost-effective options. And we do make these targets on Right in the Ring paper. So, you know, we actually, a little plug for our social media here. Go check that out, because we got some great videos sort of showing you how we've zeroed a variety of different guns, and then the targets are still in great shape, and you can train on them, make up your own drills, and, you know, do some confirmation work on that exact same target system all at once. So you're getting a great value for your money. And I'm a big fan of the universal zeroing target, because, again, if you're running a laser aiming device, typically the visible and IR lasers are slaved. So you can zero one, you can zero both. Maybe you don't have time to get out at night. Zero your daylight laser with the laser reflective film. You know your IR laser zeroed. If you've got you know, a thermal, zero at the same time. We're seeing that a lot now, especially with combat moving into that sort of asymmetric area where guys are running shorter rifles, but they have a red dot, they have a thermal optic they're putting in front of it. And again, this provides a great solution where I can have all my different gizmos on my gun and just put one target up, get it all done. And like I said, the targets will last for a while. So if you want to train on them right then and there, you can.
Absolutely.
So here we've got our passive thermal. So this is fun. This is obviously made and catered for the hunting industry, but like Tom said, we can do, you know, whatever image you'd like. But it's just nice to be able to train on a close to 1-to-1 scale for whatever it is that you're hunting. You know, whether that's predator or you know, out here we have a lot of farms that have some things called damage permits, where their crops are their source of income, and so animals can be very damaging to those crops. Right. So I've got you know, friends who manage farms, and they'll use these targets to go ahead and say, all right, it's you know, time of year where we need to protect our crops. They'll get their stuff zeroed in. They're able to take shots to sort of build their own confidence on a close to life-size target, and make sure that they're able to take those, you know, safe and responsible shots on animals, get everything dialed in, and you know, ready to, you know, keep doing their job. So I like the passive larger targets for the animals. They're fun, and you know, they have a great application. And here we come to my favorite product.
Your favorite product.
My powered thermal. So why do I like this so much? Probably just because it is absolutely unparalleled in its performance. So the fact that it's generating its own heat and has our upright proprietary technology on it, you almost have to see it to believe it. You know, you can see stuff on our social. Capturing through a thermal never really represents exactly what you actually see when you're behind the optic itself. That's just kind of is what it is with the technology. But the fact that you can set these up with a variety of power systems, it's fast. Like I said, we took this out to 1,280 meters and literally had just a small, I think it was like a boat battery or something, and like a deep cycle marine battery. Okay. Set it up, and we were able to shoot on it all night with a variety of different weapon systems, and it held up great. I saw that question. We'll get to that at the end. But just sort of touching on the reliability of this system. So part of the proprietary nature, which we won't get into, it's an exceedingly robust system. So I think it's here in the office now, but I had a target that we had over 2,000 rounds on.
2,000 rounds?
Yeah, over 2,000 rounds of
That's pretty good.
9, 5.56, and 308. So different calibers work just fine on it. And it actually had a fist-sized hole in the middle of it that we shot out, and it still worked just fine.
Okay.
Then through no fault of my own, it may have set out for about 6 months outside and still worked just fine. In rain, sleet, snow, much like the mail system, nothing can stop it.
Very good. That's awesome.
And then we come to
your second favorite.
My second favorite, the ESP sleeve, not least of it all because I can slide it over and run around like an idiot. But it's a great training tool. Originally, it was designed for those sort of like green men that pop up on military ranges. Right. But like you see here, it can go over a backer. And it's an extremely quick way to supplement your training. So say you've got a couple of backers, you're doing your normal training on it. Now you want to use a thermal optic. You literally just slide it right over your pre-existing target system and go to work. So it's great.
Yeah. Range managers have said similar to me that they like these where, they have somebody coming in that's using day sights, and then right after them, they go somebody coming in when they use thermals.
Yep.
So they don't have to do any big changes. They just run out and slip these over the targets and back in, and
Boom.
they're up and running.
Yep.
And then they can take them right back off, and they're back in business with day sights.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that means if you do manage a range, or you have a big ranch and your customers want to come in and use thermals sometimes, being able to have something that's that fast and easy and cost effective can be, it's a big value add to everybody. Ooh,
Pasters. They're fun too.
This is another example of Tom's genius. So I'll start with this and I'll let sort of Tom go into his thinking on it. But pasters are great, not only because they are your standard sort of thing. You can repair a target. People have been pasting up targets forever. But the fact that it maintains the functionality, not just here in thermals, which is our focus today, but all of the different target materials that we have pasters for. So what I really like about them is they are the most cost-effective option if you want to have some sort of laser or photoluminescent or thermal training capability. You could just start with those just to sort of dip your toes in the water. And I think so that's a great value add, especially for people who are really on a budget in the civilian market. They're gotten their first thermal, they're just getting into this, and they don't want to spend to them, what would be a substantial amount of money trying to invest in a whole target system or something like that. You can just start with the pasters and see how it goes.
Right. Yeah. If you've got your own zero targets or shooting targets already, you can just take the pasters and
Yep.
And now you can see those same targets for very little cost with thermals or night vision.
Absolutely. And the neat thing is they also provide you sort of a lot of great options for non-shooting training. So I've seen guys use the pasters for identification when they're training search and rescue, where they want to just put a small thermal signature somewhere and have guys be able to call it out maybe from a static hide or a static observation position. I can change it very quickly. So you have a team come in, you put some pasters up, they call it out and get their identification. You do your debrief with them, and a new team's coming in, and you just flip them around so they can't talk to each other and sort of game the game, as it were. So yeah, it's a really valuable training tool for sure.
Okay. And then the other big thing that I've heard is just the ability to extend the life of the targets. So just covering up those points, those holes. You can keep covering and covering and covering, and you can just continue the use of the target over and over and over again.
Oh yeah, after you.
Okay. So as far as the pasters, we have multiple options. For a 25 meter, just the simple 2 centimeter, 3/4 inch paster works very well. But we also have a 50 meter paster, which is a larger diamond.
What you have right there.
Which I have right here. Yep. And this is specifically designed to fit exactly onto the U.S. Army MOA 25 meter target. And so it fits right on there. It gives you an easy 50 meter way to zero. And then if you want to go out to 100, of course, the thermal zero target, even larger, easy out to 100 meters.
And covered this, so it absolutely can be used to just repair your currently existing target. And one of the reasons that is nice is that after you shoot the passive targets enough, you will start to see, depending on the quality of your thermal, you can start to see those holes. And some people don't like that. It can be a little distracting. Or if you maybe are zeroing multiple optics and you also want to shoot on the animal, something like that, not only can they use as an aiming reference point, but it can cover up those holes, so you're not seeing more of a distracting image.
And it's good too. Like if we were doing a competition and I was trying to outshoot you,
yes,
which probably would never happen.
You never know.
I can imagine. We don't want your shots to get mistaken for my shots, and I might claim victory, and it really wasn't the victory.
Absolutely, it's good to have dreams. Oh, the thermal tape. So yeah, how did you come up with this one?
So this is just our regular materials. All of our thermal tapes are upright, as well as others, are available on a 4-inch, 10 centimeter wide roll. And so these are sort of step up from the pasters. This gives you an easy way to cut pieces off in the field and be able to utilize that as targets. Law enforcement uses this a lot for search and rescue. If a bunch of officers show up, or even civilians, they can cut the tape and put it on the people so that when they're out there and looking and whatnot, as they're doing over, they can see, okay, these are the searchers, and hey, look, there's one guy over there that doesn't have a square. Maybe that's the guy we're looking for.
Yep, absolutely. So for a hasty solution, these are pretty great.
Yeah, a lot of people will start with this, and once they dial in exactly what their SOP is, then they'll say, okay, now make us this exact thing, this patch, that whatever. But this is a great way to start and try and test things out. Additionally, we have even larger rolls, 2 foot wide, 62 centimeter rolls without or with adhesive that you can use.
Oh, here we're just covering some different usages. So sometimes the military is going to train in a civilian area. It's great to use this kind of stuff to not block useful signage to civilians during the day, or at all, preferably, but still be able to use them as identifying markers. So for instance, if you're marking routes or something like that, people driving aren't going to not be able to see what the sign says, but you can put, different shape markers, build your own SOPs using our tapes or something like that for signage. Okay.
And with the growth of autonomous vehicles and smart vehicles, I know that some vehicles, regular civilian vehicles, even have thermal cameras.
Yes, they do.
And so who knows how road signage might change in the future.
Sure.
And the upright film could play a part in that.
Absolutely. And then, inspecting, I have a friend of mine who works in the oil and gas industry, and they're actually using thermal markers for rig inspection. So now they're doing inspection via drone versus the increased cost of having a team driving out and doing a manual inspection. They just have different parts of the rig that they're able to use this thermal tape on. And if the tape's there and they can see it, then it means that there's no issues. This is for things like pressure release valves and that kind of thing. So if the valve vents, it's going to blow off the thermal tape. They know there's an issue, and as long as the valve hasn't vented, then it's good to go. And they're dramatically cutting costs there, which I think we can all appreciate in gas prices.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate that. Yeah, what I've been seeing is that as thermal cameras get used more and more all over in our world, the next thing that happens is somebody says, I've got a great thermal camera doing X, but there's something that I can't identify, there's something I can't figure out. And that's where these films seem to come in and say, oh, well, you can figure it out by employing the film in this way or that way. And we've worked on all kinds of really interesting applications where we found ways to help people with thermal cameras do a better job.
Absolutely. And there's in fact, thermal cameras being tied to AI systems for site security as well, where they're using thermals to screen people coming in. And it's a more non-invasive, it's still slightly invasive, the fact you're looking at people with thermal cameras, but for weapons detection and that kind of stuff, for concealed weapons, you're going to be able to see that outline or imprint of a weapon under an article of clothing. And the law enforcement area, especially if they're doing low visibility stuff where they have plainclothes officers, they can use our clear film to mark themselves. And so the system is able to differentiate real time. If a person's coming in, they're carrying a weapon and they got a thermal marker or they don't. And so that's a big thing in a lot of large cities where, you have events and that kind of thing where they're, restricting access and whether or not you can carry a weapon. So there's just, like Tom said, the more this technology gets out there, the more of these unique sort of use cases we're finding.
Yeah, we had one very recently where it was a concert. It was a big concert and they wanted the plainclothes security guards to be marked so that they could tell, but they didn't want all the people in the crowd to be worried that, oh, look, there's all these security guards. Yeah. So they wanted them marked so they could be seen but not recognized by the regular person. Oh, where do we get it?
There you go. You get it there at IR.Tools/shop. You have or Amazon, Optics Planet, and we've got a list of approved dealers you can look at as well. So really, wherever you are worldwide, we can provide you with our technology, and we love these, as Tom has alluded to, these niche use cases, custom use cases, things we haven't seen before. We love hearing about that. It's exciting for us to find, different ways that our technology can be used, to help people out. It's a really cool thing. All right. And now we have come to the questions. All right.
We should have had a little musical thing.
Oh, yeah. Like a recorder. You can
yeah.
So let's go back and check these questions. So does it work in dark and cold environments, Tom?
Indeed. It works in cold and dark environments. Dark would be a almost negligible effect. Dark, it works great in light and dark. That really doesn't matter. Cold environment is a factor. When you have very frigid weather, then the passive will be more difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult. So as you get more into a colder Nordic environment, then we would recommend more the powered target or powered markers for use.
Mm-hmm. Which leads us well into our next question. Does the powered, how well does the powered model stand up? And so, like Tom said, unless you cut the power cord itself, we have yet to really hit a limit for these things. So like I said, we went well over 2,000 rounds. It wasn't 3,000, but it was more than 2,000. It was about 1,000 of 5.56 that we just dispersed over the target, and about 500 rounds of 308, and the rest in 9 mil and 45. And we're just seeing what different calibers did to the target, how it performed. Like I said, we ended up knocking about a fist-sized hole in the target, left it outside for about 6 months in the rain, and it just zero issues. And one of the nice things you can do is typically if you're on a range, you're going to have some kind of steel or other ballistic barrier. And so what we found is that putting the base of the target right even with a ballistic barrier, you can have that entire cable and power system shielded. So now your only consideration is what kind of caliber rating that ballistic barrier is, rated to. For us, we found it pretty easy to actually take a steel target and put that at the base of the power target and have the power target sitting up just above the steel. Not only is that a great visual example of the differences in performance of steel versus our powered system, but it completely protects the powered cables and battery and all that as well, because you don't want to shoot a battery.
Yeah,
typically not great.
And we probably want to say that the passive alone target is thinner than the powered and would take a little bit less. It probably wouldn't get the full 2,000 that the powered target would.
No, it probably wouldn't, but it is more robust than a standard paper target for sure. And it's going to hold up to the elements as well. And that's another important difference, is that a lot of times you could have a paper target and start raining and it'll almost fall apart by itself just because of the rain. And that's just never going to be the case with any of our targets. So I found that they're nice to just kind of have up anyway. I can see them normally. I can shoot them. I can shoot them with thermal. So it's a great thing. And one of the use cases we found that's been pretty good for our powered systems, as well as machine gun ranges, where guys are putting out a huge volume of fire all day. You've got a lot of guns online, and those things will hold up great, even to larger caliber rounds. And something that we're certainly interested in, the Army's in its final selection process for its new medium and heavy machine guns. And so they're going to be employing those with thermal optics as part of the entire weapon system. So it's going to be the powered system would be a pretty good training tool for those as they start getting rolled out to the military. But in general, just if you guys are looking at a cost to benefit ratio and you'd say, hey, we want to do some training on thermals, you buying 1 or 2 powered thermal targets would last you a very long time. With the normal amount that civilians or law enforcement agencies are going to shoot. So there's definitely some really great value that these targets are bringing to the end user.
Okay. All right. We have another question here. How can I test your products? So on our store, you can actually go in and search on test and evaluation kits. And there's a number of products that we've put together in kits that are helpful for testing. So you can go right on there and purchase that and send it right to you. And if you do, then we'll definitely reach out and have any sort of a kickoff meeting, answer questions, make sure you're ready to go to test that.
Absolutely. Another question came in is how to set up a range, whether that's a new range or a currently existing range. So it's going to be a little bit more thought and planning required if you have an indoor range, like we said, just because of the the air is all going to be the same temperature. Everything's going to be the same temperature inside. So we would recommend a powered system in that case. Outdoor range is a little bit more easy. We've got the ESP sleeves. We got our passive targets that we've covered today. But the great thing is they go on pretty much all existing target systems, whether that's just a couple of furring strips set up with a target stand, or you've got movers or targets that pop up and pop down that articulate and turn. They work. If you can put a piece of cardboard on it, you can put our target on it. So there's really no limitations when it comes to whatever range setup you're looking at, either building or you currently have in use. It's more, what are my end users, what are the people using my range going to require for training, and then what kind of target or product best serves their needs.
Okay. Another question, how would I evaluate upright thermal film for alternative applications? So give me a call. That's really the best thing. This is one of the really fun things that I do on a regular basis, is look at these very oddball applications and find ways that we can use our technology to help. So yeah, give me a call, text, chat, email. I'm everywhere.
Yeah.
DM, Instagram, I don't know. Just reach out and we'll talk about it and come up with a plan.
Yep. So you've got another question. How does the thermal actually work different than the first generation of the upright thermal, work different than the first generation? I think that's a you question.
Yeah, it's all about those random microthermal reflectors.
Yes. Got to say it one more time.
Yes. I can say that as many times as you like. But yeah, it's all about the ability to take the temperature from everywhere in the environment and reflecting it back to that user. All of the targets there's two things. There's how much heat is the target giving off and how much heat is the target reflecting. And so those are the two things that are going on. And actually the high contrast and the upright are similar in the heat that they give off.
Right.
But they're very different in the heat that they reflect. And so it's that ability to reflect colder temperatures which really sets the upright apart from the extreme.
Yep.
From the high contrast.
And it looks like our last question here is, if you're having problems with a thermal target, what are the best troubleshooting steps? So sort of a two-part answer there. I think if it's a powered thermal target, definitely check the power system for sure. Simple electrical testers, you can get them for $12 on Amazon or any hardware store. Those are handy to have on hand if you're going to be using a powered system, just to make sure that the target is actually getting power. Outside of that, they kind of just work. Outside of power delivery issues, we've never really seen those things fail. If you're using a passive system, this is not a passing the buck answer, but I'd almost reach out to the thermal manufacturer. What's your favorite words? The
random thermal micro.
Yep.
Thermal micro mirrors. What are they?
Reflectors. Yes. Oh man, put you on the spot there. But those really can't not work.
Right.
Like, as long as the target's there, they're going to work. So if you have a passive system, and you're experiencing some issues, you're either in an exceedingly unique environmental condition, typically very thick fog, because water has thermal mass, so that can cause issues. But outside of really thick fog, it's probably a thermal optical issue. That does happen, again, depending on what you're running and what you bought. Those things can have problems. So yeah.
One of the things to look at very carefully is the automatic gain and contrast control. Mm-hmm. So typically any thermal scope, when you take it out of the box, it's automatically doing all those set points to help you see it better. But in some cases, those set points are not the exact right set points to see the scene correctly. Mm-hmm. And so you may want to take it into manual gain and contrast control, and that might give you a lot better luck.
Absolutely. And, we're all fans of just taking it out of the box and using them. But with thermal optics, it's really best to read the instructions. I know. I hate saying it, but there are a lot of options. And as these things grow, they're just digital technology. So really it's up to the people programming these things, what they can do. So it is worth it to take the time. You're going to spend not an inconsiderable amount of money at minimum. So buying these things. So, taking 10 minutes and reading the manual, at least the quick start guide, something YouTube tutorial, whatever you have. But putting a little bit of time into that, learning your system is going to be really important, because it is going to mitigate some of those potentially frustrating situations where you've got it all set up and you're like,
where to go?
What is happening?
Yeah.
So I think that's all the questions. Closing thoughts, sir?
We're excited to connect with you folks and see what we can do. The possibilities are endless.
Yep.
So we thank you so much for your time and watching this and hanging out with us and some of our bad jokes.
Dad jokes are strong today.
Dad jokes. Yes.
Yeah.
My kids will be ashamed.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Yeah, mine too. But that's all right. They're not watching, so
Well, they'll grow up to be ashamed.
If we do our jobs right.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Like I said, if you got any questions, you can reach out in all the ways, whichever way we are available. You can, like I said, check out our website. That's IR.Tools/shop. Remember the discount and the additional discount down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks very much.